welcome to episode 6 of Cloud Tech 10 for the 17th of April 2017. I'm Mark and I'm going to tell you all the latest news about Microsoft Azure from the past week in 10 minutes or less. The Azure Functions portal user interface has just received a significant overhaul to provide a new integrated experience. The general look and feel has been improved to be more consistent with the rest of the Azure portal. Function Apps now features a new browse blade that you can pin to the Azure portal menu. Just click on More Services, then search for Function Apps and click the star to add it to your menu. Clicking the Function Apps item takes you to the dedicated Function Apps blade. From here, you can now see all of the Function Apps in your current Azure subscription. You can use the search box here to look for a specific Function App, which is useful if you have a large number of Function Apps in your subscription. You can drill down on any Function App and see the functions it contains. Clicking the chevron here will filter the view to focus on that specific Function App. Click the X here to clear the filter. Within each Function App, you now see an overview with the status and other information about the app. If features have been configured, the details of those features are here and can be clicked to access them quickly. The Settings tab gives quick access to Function App level settings, such as the runtime version, proxies, configuration, and host keys. The Platform Features tab lists all the relevant app service settings, and the API Definition tab takes you to the OpenAPI Swagger metadata tools. You can easily view a list of functions within a Function App and navigate to any of them. Then, as well as the code editing tools, you can easily get to the integration options to add or manage triggers, inputs or outputs, the Manage tab where you can enable or disable a function and manage keys, and access the monitoring view to check the logs for your function. A preview of the Azure CLI Shell has been released. The Azure CLI Shell provides an interactive version of the Azure CLI and is particularly helpful whilst learning to use the CLI's features. Once installed, the Azure CLI Shell is invoked by typing AZ Shell. Let's start by creating a resource group. If I start typing, the shell will provide drop-downs to list available options. As I select commands, help information is displayed. As soon as I type space, another drop-down appears to help me choose the next command. I want to create a new resource group, so I select Create. In this case, as well as the help, I also get a tutorial option. If I want to follow the tutorial, I use 2 colons followed by the tutorial number. In this case, 1. Now I'll be walked through each part of the process to create a resource group. Detailed help for each part is shown here, whilst the full command we're building is shown here. When I need to choose the Azure region where my resource group will be created, you can see that the drop-downs provide help in choosing the location. I continue to follow the tutorial and type the name of my new resource group, and that's my resource group created. The next thing I want to do is create a virtual machine to place in my new resource group. So I type V, and I see a list of commands that start with V. In this case, VM for virtual machines and VMSS for virtual machine scale sets. Again, when I type space, I get another drop down with the options for the next part of my command. I want to create a virtual machine, so let's choose Create. And as before, I see options for tutorials. So from here, I can quite easily follow through the tutorial and create a new virtual machine step by step. As well as the Azure CLI Shell, the Azure CLI itself has had new commands added this week. It's now possible to manage the Azure Container Registry, Azure Batch, Azure Key Vault, and Azure SQL Database using the Azure CLI. Organizations that have been using Azure for some time sometimes have a large number of Azure resources that have been deployed using the classic deployment model. The newer Resource Manager deployment model, as well as enabling deployment via Azure Resource Manager templates, also enables new capabilities and supported limits for certain features. For example, virtual machines deployed using the classic model can't take advantage of the recently released Manage Disks feature. To help move existing resources from the classic to Resource Manager models, a number of tools have been made available over the past several months. The most recent allows organizations using ExpressRoute to migrate their ExpressRoute circuits, associated virtual networks, as well as all of the virtual machines on those virtual networks from the classic to Resource Manager deployment model. The migration process does not require any downtime to perform. The documentation covering the various deployment migration tools has also been updated to include additional planning documentation and answers for frequently asked questions. Azure AD B2C directories are now generally available in Europe. The Azure AD B2C service is available worldwide, but you can now select a location for data residency. When creating a new Azure AD B2C instance, you'll be asked to select a country or region. What you select here will determine the data residency location. For example, selecting countries such as the United States, Canada, Mexico, or Panama will result in data residing in the United States. For the United Kingdom, Belgium, France, Germany, Spain, or Sweden, data will reside in Europe. A full list of countries and the data residency regions can be found in the Azure Active Directory B2C documentation. Version 2 of the Azure SDK for Node.js has been made available in preview. You can install the new SDK via npm using npm install Azure. For convenience, this installs all of the individual Node.js related modules for Azure, but if your application requires just specific modules, then they can be installed on their own. A list of the individual packages can be found on the npm page for Azure. If you're developing Node.js applications with Azure, you can use the Azure Node Essentials extension for Visual Studio Code to help streamline the development process. In Visual Studio Code, search for Azure Node Essentials to install the extension. Then, once installed, you'll be able to use features such as application scaffolding, which quickly creates the basic framework for a Node.js application that uses Azure. You can use snippets to inject code to perform common functionality, such as authenticating with Azure or creating a service principal. You can also browse for Azure packages and add them to your code. The Azure Instance Metadata service has been made available in preview. Initially, this service is available only to virtual machines deployed in the West Central US Azure region, but will be rolled out to other locations shortly. This service allows a virtual machine running in Azure to query information about its configuration and environment. This can be useful when running automated tasks and scripts that perform routine patching and maintenance, or for updating configuration management systems and scenarios where a script or process needs to know more about the environment it's running in. The service works on both Windows and Linux virtual machines. Here's a Linux virtual machine. I can use the curl command to retrieve instance metadata. I need to provide a custom header, which I pass using the -h option. The service is a REST API that's accessible over a non-routable IP address that can only be reached from within the virtual machine itself. I can view all of the available information from the root/metadata/instance path, and I need to provide an API version. Okay, there's the information. It's in JSON format, but it's a little difficult to read, so I can pass it through a tool like JQ to make the output a little easier on the eye. So if I now scroll up to the top, we can see there's a compute section and a network section. In compute, I can see information relating to the image and operating system that the virtual machine is running. There's information about the Azure environment, such as the Azure region, virtual machine size, the virtual machine's unique identifier, and the fault and update domain information. If I just want to view the compute information, I can just add compute to the URL. Or if I want to find out what image version was used to deploy this virtual machine, I could drill down to that specific information by adding version. Or alternatively, I could use JQ to extract the same information. Likewise, I can modify the URL just to retrieve network information, or I could change the URL to drill down to the IPv4 information. Full documentation on how to use this feature and the information that can be retrieved can be found in the Azure documentation. That's all for Cloud Tech 10 this week. Don't forget, tell your friends, like, share and subscribe, or follow me on Twitter. I'll see you next week. Cheers for watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and follow me on Twitter for more.